Hello, everybody, and welcome to the reading room. I hope that you're well, and welcome to the Reverse Room Rumble with your boy, Mark Reid. Now, we have an interesting question here, and one that I wanted to ask for a long time, and I really think we need to discuss more on. Is religion failing? And the answer might actually, or my opinion might actually surprise you. I'm going to go through a few things, but first up, if you're new to the channel, if you don't know what you're seeing in front of you, what is the reverse room rumble? It's a premise built off something I called a royal room rumble, where I'd drop in and just basically engage with whoever was in a room, whether it be 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, however many, and bring secular humanism and atheism as concepts to whatever room, no matter the disagreement. And I had a few rules for that. Number one, it would be me by myself. I wouldn't have any help or assistance or set anybody up to come with me. So to sort of dogpile on people. I wouldn't try to change the topic to what I wanted. It would always be the topic of the room, whether that be Christians talking about why atheism is silly, or evolution, or any of these topics that I felt competent to discuss on, or at least semi-competent to discuss on. I would sort of obey the rules of the room. So sort of no cursing if it was a Christian room and things like that. It was suggested to me that I reverse it, have people come into my room and see if if they want to comment on the subjects I've got. So thus was born the reverse room rumble. So all rumblers out there, whether you be atheist or Christian or Muslim or wherever background you're from. But I think I will start off. And I want to give a big shout out to a few people, some people in the chat. Pinworm, just fantastic person. Hi, Pinworm. Robin, good to see you. Beheaded Kamikaze, awesome. And H8 Carbon, good to see you as well. So this is the question. My answer will probably surprise you. No, is the answer that I will give. No, it's not failing, and it's actually getting stronger. And you might go, oh, but Mark, what do you mean by that? Now, I do want to take you through my perception and my my thoughts on where we're at, and I'll get out sort of some um, um, some information that I can share with you on why I'm saying that, why I'm suggesting that. Now, I first want to go through what the Pew Research is a good place for this. This gets they do very in-depth analysis of trends over the last 20 years, but also trends going into the future. And I'll get to the future projections. I do have future projections here. But basically, how it's changed in the last few decades. Now, this is the United States specifically. And what we see is Christians dropping like a stone from 1972. I was born in 76. It is slightly before I was born, but about when I was born, it was 90% roughly. Definitely high 80s is where the religiosity in the United States was, and they've fallen to 63, which is a huge drop, like massive drop. Whereas atheists have gone from roughly 8% up to about 29%, or religiously unaffiliated. Now, religiously unaffiliated can include a few groups. It can include people that are spiritual, or people that are sort of believe in a God, but they don't actually follow any religion. With this session, I really want to focus on the organized religions, the actual religions that have churches, services, they're organized, they have set codes of conduct that they lay down, not just people that think there might be a God out there or believe that there's a God out there, but don't do anything about it. Like the deist kind of thing isn't really a religion, because they don't have any organized form of worship. And so I guess with my classification, I don't think I can put deism under witches. Sure, absolutely, Robin. And Pinworm, add compliments for Mark. What, I'm supposed to add my own? Hey, Pinworm, I'm doing your work for you. Okay. What's a compliment from Mark? Mark has an incredibly shiny head that makes me feel very comfortable. There we go. That's the compliment to myself. But I'll compliment myself. That's not a problem. Yeah, so that's the growth period up in 2020, and it's sort of the reason why that is mostly due to the age, right? So we've got um, young Americans that basically they're highly irreligious. If you look at sort of where they stand, um, half of Americans in their 20s are religious. Um, the oldest Americans, those sort of 70 plus, um, sort of 80% of them over 70 are Christian, right? So you've got this trend where the younger Americans don't believe in God while the older ones still do. And that skews the stats, especially with an aging population. So you have this oh, thank you so much, Ember. I really appreciate it. Ember coming through with the $2. Thank you, darling. And bedtime. Good night, Ember. Take care. Lots of love. So you have this trend of young people coming up that really are religiously unaffiliated. They might have God beliefs, but they're religiously unaffiliated, which is great. And let's look at some projections out. And I've quoted this particular study from Pew Research on multiple occasions, projecting the religious group's population shares by 2070 in the US is disastrous for Christians. So the steady switching, basically, there's about 4 different scenarios that they point out. Steady switching is just if the trends continue as they have been doing over the last 50 years or so. Trends continue. By 2070, Christians drop below being 50%, and religiously unaffiliated goes up. But other religions are also increasing at the expense of Christians as well. If switching continues to accelerate, but brakes are applied. So so what we've seen over the last 20 years is that switching from like deconverting, essentially switching from a religion to no religion, has not only been increasing, it's been increasing exponentially. They basically it's been getting faster. And this scenario, and so steady switching assumes that the rate at which they were switching will continue. This is assuming that that acceleration will still grow as it has been. And that means that Christians will definitely be in the minority. But in that scenario, the religiously unaffiliated are not yet in the majority. Scenario 3 is if the switching continues to accelerate, nuns would form sort of unabated. So if the switching, there's no brakes on it, basically the religiously unaffiliated will be in the majority by 2070. So those are the main 3 scenarios. 4 is if all switching ceased, right? So which is highly unlikely that people won't switch religions, or deconvert. Basically, it's highly unlikely. But just say something happens, and so I don't think scenario 4 is very at the same time, I don't think scenario 3 is very likely either, just because, and here's the reason why. There's a limit on the amount of people that will deconvert from Christianity. I think that it'll probably slow down, but not stop. So I think scenario 2, which is it will continue to accelerate, but there will be sort of some mitigating factors, some brakes applied. And I think that is probably the most likely scenario. But still, in this case, Christians will drop. But the thing you've got to remember is under any scenario, even the most sort of optimistic scenario, except for something as unrealistic as nobody changing religion, the Christians will still be in the minority. So why am I saying that religion is not failing? It's because all of this is in the US, right? So broaden your mind and let's look at the world. So under global religious landscape, there's a lot of births to religious people as opposed to non-religious people. And there's religious switching to both Christian and Muslim religions as far as the world is concerned, especially in Africa and less developed countries. By the time it is, so this is the prediction to 2060 by global population. Um, Unaffiliated is going to drop from 16% to 13%, just because of the countries are. Did I even share my other tabs? I didn't, did I? Uh, okay, so global population wise, these will it will switch, and you can see this here from 16 to 13% because of the births being made worldwide, and the switching to religions like Islam, which is growing fast. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. You can see that in the green line in these graphs. Over 45 next 45 years, it'll grow faster than any other world religion, and it'll grow from, like, Christians are estimated to grow from 31 to 32% of the global population. Muslims are estimated to grow from 24 to 31%, which is a massive, massive growth. Folk religions are going to remain steady. Other religions are going to remain steady. But it's more concerning is the drop in unaffiliated that concerns me. And this is sort of a by kind of region. The future projected change in global population. Yeah, I think we went through that. So this is the global population trends of red is atheism, yellow is non-religious, green is non-practicing religion, and blue is practicing religion. Now, North America, you can see the spike in atheism rising and practicing religion going down. But unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, North America isn't the only place that exists. Now, we do have, like, for instance, what's concerning is, say, the Orthodox East, right, where you have a big spike in atheism and then it drops, probably due to Putin's Russia and people leaving Russia who sort of aren't Orthodox Catholic. There's a massive spike in non-practicing religions and practicing religions, and a decline in atheism. But the Cynic East, you've got a huge increase in atheism, basically, due to China, which is a massive. So that's the world population. Atheism remains fairly constant, but the world, excluding China, it does drop because China is such an atheistic country. So I found that interesting. Now, the composition of countries, it's interesting to see that Christianity, mostly in the first world, it does have roots in Latin America, Islam, mostly in Africa, Middle East, developing world, Judaism, unaffiliated. Of course, China is the massive standout there, but mostly first world countries, Hinduism, Buddhism, folk religion. Now, so the major problem for us is we do a lot of countering of Christianity, and that makes sense because that's the one we encounter. But I'd like you to think about whether that's the dangerous religion. That the religion most on the rise is Islam. And sort of the largest sect of Islam that's growing, well, the largest sect of Christianity that's growing is Pentecostal, I believe. It's sort of this sort of Pentecostal religion. But the largest one of Islam is Ahmadi. Ahmadi Islam is the fastest growing sect. Now, it's kind of a messianic sort of Islamic thing, and it is relatively peaceful, but there's no reason, if it keeps growing, it's going to stay peaceful. And it's sort of this idea that there's this one sort of prophet that sort of has given a message to the world along with the usual ones, and it's got 73 unique orders, which means that schisms are probable, very probable. So this is the kind of thing that worries me, and it follows the 5 pillars of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam are things like declaration of faith, prayer, almsgiving, fasting, and pilgrimage, which we can go into that a bit. But I'd like to put it to you that, yeah, you can kind of say, hey, religion is failing in America, in Australia, in a lot of countries. But if you look at it worldwide, it's not failing. In fact, it's growing stronger. And that kind of worries me, and it worries me about what kind of world that we're going to have, whether that's going to be a secular first world and a religious third world or developing world. But I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. I'd like to hear what you think. And first up, we have it's Nitty.
Hey,
Doing.
what? How am I doing? I'm good.
Mm.
Can't complain.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on what I've presented, or any thoughts at all on the subject, actually?
Well, I'm glad where America's going.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I talked about a little bit last night with my buddy Kevin was that around the pandemic, especially in America, one of the side effects or the lasting effects is that people delve deeper into their in groups if they were pretty invested in them or not apt to question their group. They got deeper into their group. But then there were a lot of people who found it difficult to stay in their in group, particularly the religious ones with the zealotry, denials of, science, lying on national TV, things like that. And people in their in group going, yeah, we buy it. And you're just like,
Yeah.
what? And so it created this dissonance and separation within that group that allowed people to explore and reevaluate and maybe rethink things. It's almost like it's not the suffering that made them leave Christianity. It's the suffering that, or the unrest, cultural unrest, and spiritual unrest by proxy that moved them towards belief or non-belief, or just unaffiliation. But that's my theory on Americans that deconvert, like the rise of deconversion stories and things like that. Now, as for the rest of the world, lots of the places where you cite that religion's increasing, like I have no clue how much COVID affected them, right? I don't think it did at all in a lot of their cases. And so, that kind of phenomena is just not going to be represented there, nor is the access. Like, I wonder what the access is to digital stores of information, right? Or internet access in general, the ability to engage in communities that aren't of their own, right? On just like a at will basis, like, look at my phone, it's got 4G access. Like, I don't think so. Right. One of the reasons that, and so my job is a web developer, right? And I have to do benchmark testing for performance. And 3G is like our, baseline for like how well a site performs, which do you know why that is? Because the largest
3G networks. Yeah.
Well, no, it's literally just China. Like, everyone else be damned. Like, if you're still developing G connection, it's like whatever. But because like there's this huge Chinese market force that's still on 3G, that's the only reason it's still a benchmark. Everyone else in the digital world is like 4G, woo. But then if you think about the contrast of privilege in those places where religion is increasing, then it's like, can you even imagine what it would be like to go back to that reduction in information access at this point?
Yes.
Well, you lived it, right? But for people who grew up with
because occasionally, like, our 4G will drop, like, and we get LTE, which is 3G network kind of thing. So I can literally imagine what it's like, because like we have an LTE fallback.
No, I mean like nothing, like no real internet access at all.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
exactly. And that's where I'm like, that's how I think of these people, right? It's not
Right.
bad. It doesn't make me think they're lesser or anything. It's just that their
Mm.
culture and their communities are not able to, or maybe even unwilling to, engage with diverse forms of thought. And so the more that they are left in these spaces, of course, like they're going to be able to propagate their numbers or keep reinforcing their narratives because there's no opposition to it. And even if there could be opposition, sometimes their governments are just like, yeah, no. Even
But
if you get
but
access, we're not going to let you have it.
but some of these places they're not
It's true.
sort of,
That's true.
so if you're looking at Turkey or
Yeah, it might not be as strict.
right, like and I understand that sort of thing with some places in Africa where their things
Right.
limited, but
I
even
guess that's where my
Africa,
head is kind of going.
well, yeah, and you're not wrong, but even Africa is getting sort of more technology developed in it. Like if you go down to South Africa, it's got a lot of
Oh,
technological development down there,
yeah,
and the rest of Africa is following suit. I think largely that's more due to China than anything else. To be honest with you, like they've
right.
actually done a lot of development
Cheapen.
in Africa. Well, so
Well, okay, not
China,
sorry, bad connotation, but you know what I mean. Like it's just quicker. They're less far in the world, and
well, they've got like America sort of, it didn't really invest in Africa, it more just paid them for their resources and then left essentially, like sort of, you know, didn't really invest in them. China has a very different approach, and it makes me worry about sort of
so,
China's place in the world because they're doing sort of the Belt and Road to do trade routes kind of thing. And China's history has always been trade routes and development in
right.
other countries in exchange for preferential treatment in trade. That's always been its modus operandi. And they've invested a lot in Africa, but are getting great returns from Africa in sort of a quid pro quo kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
makes me very worried about the sort of status of sort of America's place when China is making such inroads into Africa and other places. But look at one of the
You
ones that I
don't want
brought
us
up.
to be prominent anyway.
Well, I think that,
I'm teasing a bit, but
well, so China's got a really weird place in my head because I can kind of, like, they're very vilified, and I don't think they're as bad as people make out. However, they've done some really awful things, like there's some
oh yeah,
real
yeah,
problems there. So I kind of lean towards America being, your friend who's a bit of an idiot, but you know they're generally good natured. You know what I mean? Like they're not very, they're pretty trustworthy kind of thing. They do some dumb stuff occasionally, but you gotta love them. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that's really the way I feel about America. So sorry, Americans. You do some dumb
I
stuff occasionally
mean, we have Florida Man, so
for a reason. Yeah, sure. But if you look at some other places, like for instance, the rise of organized religion, say Russia, right? Now, I would
Sure,
postulate,
yeah,
and this is just my opinion, that it was from when sort of Putin got power and he sort of marginalized a lot of groups, like for instance the gay communities and he's very,
right.
very Greek Orthodox Christian, very Greek Orthodox Christian. So I think that a lot of
Greek, really,
people,
not Russian Orthodox, or
Russian Orthodox, sorry,
okay,
my
I was like,
apologies. Yeah, Russian Orthodox,
because
absolutely,
that is
Russian
its own
Orthodox.
thing,
Yeah. Sorry, that's me having a brain melt.
lower, but yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, Russian Orthodox. So his sort of backing of that religion as more or less a state religion is pretty. I think that's got a lot to do with it, and they've got a lot of internet, but they've got access to the entire world. But it is the way that they're sort of putting the religion front and center. It's the political stance of the religion, and I see the same thing being tried in America. For their population, religious people in America have way more power than they ought to have. You know that
Yeah,
their religious affiliations, they're organized, they do all of this sort of really, and let's face it, they've got a ton of money going into lobbying. Like, let's not dance around this. That's really where a lot of their stuff is coming from. And I did think about touching on things like the Seventh-day Adventists, for instance, who are
Oh
just
goodness.
insanely wealthy and use that to lobby governments. Like this
Hmm.
this meshing of capitalism and religion, which is horrendous. Um,
I
but
agree.
I think that democracy, and that if people eventually, if these trends continue and Christians become less than 50% of the population, things definitely
In
will
America?
change around that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. If
Well,
politicians will go, well, I'm going to be voted out if I, you know, put this prayer here or this thing here, they're not going to do it anymore. Because they only get
they can
those
be
lobby.
bought.
Well, they only get the lobbying bucks if they are in government. That's the thing.
Right,
Like,
that's what
as
I'm
soon as
saying.
they,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So while someone may be bought, sort of lobbied, and let's face it, it's basically bribery in my mind. But
It
um,
is, yeah.
given money to, they might do that. But if they really think they're going to lose their seat or their position of power through democracy, they won't do it. And that's one of the checks that democracy has. So
Yeah.
I think that
Or
even though
ought
there's
to
a ton of,
anyway.
well, I think that even though there is a ton of, and don't get me, I'm not gonna be naive and say, hey, democracy only works on will of the people. Money has nothing to do with it. Yeah, screw that. It obviously does, or else companies wouldn't be giving millions to politicians. They wouldn't be doing that if it didn't work. Um,
Right.
that if see, but yeah, I would like to say that reaching below 50% would stop that. But then again, I'm thinking of Wade versus Roe at the moment, and going,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, once you've instilled like a higher authority in the establishment as we currently have it, it is going to subvert like the will of the people at some, well, at a lot of points if it wants to, uh, until we either change the way the Supreme Court works, or you know they start dying sooner. I don't really, because it's for the rest of their lives or until they can't serve anymore.
well, rip RBG, but RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, yeah,
Bader
that's it.
Ginsburg, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she was amazing. But you've got a Supreme Court justice in there who's been caught taking bribes, and literally nothing is happening to them, even though they've taken bribes. Let's call it what they are, in my opinion, bribes. And there's nothing happening to him. I don't know who oversees the Supreme Court, but
Basically, no one.
it's
The
crazy.
legislative branch, I think, is supposed to, but when their like majority is, people in league with the Supreme Court, it's just not going to happen. Hold on, let me look that up for my civics.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of him. Chuck Grassley, I think. No, that's something else. Judge Clarence Thomas. He takes gifts and doesn't disclose them.
Yeah, it's the legislative's branch. Legislative's, God, there. It's the legislators' responsibility to impeach judges if necessary.
Right.
They're not going to do that.
No.
So yay. Yeah, I just read my elementary, middle school memory kicked back into the Trinity chart for America.
Yeah.
I'm like, which direction does that arrow go? Right, it's that way.
Yeah. So we've got a system where the religious right can influence even the Supreme Court with money and bribery, and no way to really stop them, even though we're supposed to live in a democracy where it is the will of the people that is supposed to be forefront. And
Yeah,
it's kind
we would
of
need 2/3 majority in the House and Senate to, or
that
sorry,
will
at
never
least.
happen.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like in order to even start the motion to impeach a corrupt
Right,
judge,
right.
like that's what they would need. They would need like super majorities to make sure that votes always go through to stop this bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt
I
you,
don't.
but
No,
that's
no.
just
I
yeah.
just don't see any sort of practical scenario where that will happen, especially when you have the religious right sort of railing against what essentially democracy and talking about theocracy. I saw
Yeah.
somebody talking about I think it was on the Wavelength, Justin's new channel. They were talking with
Okay.
Aaron Ra and had a
Mm,
clip of a guy talking about how separation of church and state isn't there so that religion doesn't have influence on the state. It's there so the state can't tell religion what to do and not interfere when it decides how the country goes. It was really scary, actually. I did
mm.
comment on his video saying that is really, really scary that you have people out there sort of going, no, religion should be controlling the politicians. They should have influence on the government.
That's
We
right.
should have a religious country. And they have way more power than they ought to under a representative democracy. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how they managed to get this power. It's kind of it's very, very troubling. Very troubling.
Yeah, it's bonkers. Like there's a channel Rebel HQ where they interview people at rallies or political news press conferences and things like that. And one of the
Sure.
questions to one of like the big old Santa Claus beard MAGA people was, would you rather have Trump as a dictator for a month or another Biden presidency? And they, without
Right.
hesitation, Trump is a dictator.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, dictator for a month is dictator forever. Like,
Oh, sure. Dictated for a day is
sure,
dictated forever.
right, yeah. And then, today, by the way, Trump just started to endorse the American Bible, which is signed and endorsed by Trump. For $59.99, you can have the American
Really?
Bible with the
Really?
Pledge of Allegiance in it. Yes. Fucking
The
yes.
American Bible. I'm
It's a
not
King James
familiar with that.
version, but on the website,
Oh god, alright.
hilariously, it says this is the authorized version of the Bible. Like these motherfuckers have a monopoly on the Holy Spirit or something, right?
Hmm.
Completely unhinged. And it says on the website that the money won't go to Trump's campaign funds. But guess
Oh,
who? Well, here's
it'll
the
go to his
kicker.
legal costs, yeah.
No, the organization responsible, like Trump either owns it or is like in charge of it. So it's like, what the fuck? American news is stupid. And like, it's taking everything in me to not text my like former church friends and be like, if you guys are absolutely absent of intelligence, then vote for this man. If you have half a value of the Bible that you say you do, you know what to do. Right? I'm
Well
mad for Christians because of this grifting asshole. That's how I feel today.
well, I'm not I would like to say that most Christians wouldn't like a dictator kind of thing, but I mean the polls are coming back that he's not that far behind. And that's
I
absolutely
know.
frightening because the first thing, if a person's a dictator for a day, the first thing he will do is eliminate all chances of removing him as a dictator. That's the very first thing he'll do.
Yeah,
And then
martial
from
law day
there,
1, quote.
correct, yeah. And we have the lovely Robin. How are you, Robin? Oh, your screen is black. I don't know why. Robin, are you there?
More of us goofy
Oh, there
Americans.
you go. There you go. How you
Yeah,
doing?
My lighting's not very good. I don't have my light down here. I have to drag it downstairs.
Ah, that's
Um,
Oh, you're
okay.
fine.
I'm doing good. How
Oh,
are
you're
you?
good.
I came in because y'all were talking about the Supreme Court stuff, and so
Oh, yeah.
can I just say some few things I know about that before
Yes,
Yeah,
I
sir.
sure. Go ahead. Any
kind of
thoughts you
off
have?
topic? But um, Stephen Breyer, who is the justice who retired before Jackson, when Jackson was nominated, so he was actually one of the dissenters on the Dobbs decision. He has written a new book, and he says that he thinks that there's a good chance that the Dobbs will be overturned. Um, so that's really
What's
good
Dobbs?
news.
Sorry, what's
Dobbs was
Dobbs?
the decision that changed Roe v. Wade.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Dobbs versus Jackson. Is that the one?
Yes, and
Okay,
that
yep,
was
yep.
the decision that took Roe v. Wade away from us,
Hmm.
or Casey actually, because Roe v. Wade actually was not. Casey had been since then, so Casey was actually the decision that was the prominent. Was it was like it was restrictions, like where the abortion clinics had to go make their rooms so big, and so it was just stuff to make it harder. Um, but but he thinks that Dobbs will be overturned. He thinks that there will be a case come in front of the Supreme Court, where a woman dies or something, or is injured severely from this decision, and like in Texas, these women and stuff, because once it starts, once they stop people from getting abortions that are medically necessary, then they are infringing upon those people in a way that damages them, and so he thinks it'll be overturned, which is really big news coming from a ex Supreme Court justice to actually say that.
Hmm.
But as far as like Thomas, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is one of the people who is actively working to get the judicial system straightened out. He's like a dog with a bone after these people, and he has the judicial conference right now has um, like okay, the Supreme Court justice, the head justice, which would be Roberts, sits on the judicial conference, plus like
Right.
various different federal judges, and they're doing a lot of stuff. The judicial conference is, and like Sheldon has been writing letters to them over and over and over and over, and he's getting answers. I don't know if anybody wants to go look at his channel. He has a bunch of videos on playlist about the whole scheme of how the court was captured,
And what
and
was his name? Sorry,
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Whitehouse. Okay.
Yes, and he is from Rhode Island. He's a senator from Rhode Island, and he has a whole stream playlist on there called "The Scheme," which is he's written like two books. The Scheme and Captured are the two books he has that I've read about the court, and it goes into he starts if you start from the beginning on the playlist, he has the whole story of how the court got captured, what started that, and everything. And then he has also a playlist on um, environmental, like on the climate change
Yeah.
too.
I'll link them both for you, Robin. Just
He
keep
is
going. I'll link them both because his other one is Time to Wake Up, Sheldon's Climate Change
yes.
Speeches.
There's like 200 or something of them on that one,
Yeah.
but but the Scheme is really, I mean, it will open your mind so much to what is going on, and he goes into such great detail on like all the billionaires that are in on this and everything, and when it sort of started with Justice Lewis Powell back, who was nominated by Nixon, and at that time it occurred to these people that there was that the country was moving away from allowing them to control everything, and so he figured he wrote a memo saying how the only way they could control everything was through the courts, and that's when they started going after the courts. And it's been a long time, a long game that they've been playing. You know what I mean? And just like I mean, it's terrible that we just sit and watched them do it and didn't even realize what was going on, really, in a way. But Senator Justice Breyer said that they were like the dog that caught the car. Now he doesn't think they're going to be able to hold on to the car. That's pretty much, the public is too moved too far the other way on abortion.
Yeah, well, it's sort of that I see that. I mean, I kind of see that Christianity in particular controls a whole lot of how the laws are governed, and you can make sort of the argument that laws are influenced by your morality kind of thing. So I can kind of see where Christianity has this influence way above the population of Christians in the US.
Yes,
and,
and
you know,
and the fundamental laws. And not all our Christians are like that either. You know what I mean? Not all Christians support these laws. And so just it's a fundamentalist extreme group that is pushing these laws, and that doesn't represent all of our Christians either.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I get that. But I guess what this thing is religion failing. I kind of, and my answer is no, not worldwide. But what are your thoughts on? I mean, Christianity is going to be overshadowed by Islam by 2060 or so. So I would like to hear your thoughts, and I'll welcome Stephen Anderson in, and apparently who hates everybody, which is lovely. And he's gone. But what are your thoughts on like Islam overtaking Christianity?
Did you say who? Did you say he was here?
Stephen Anderson. Apparently, it says he hates everybody.
Oh, I thought you meant he was trying to get in.
I think. Well, he was in the back room, and I put him on, and then he dropped out. So I'm not sure if it was a troll, because Stephen Anderson is that horrible.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was like, huh?
Well, I mean, if he wants to come on here and talk, it's fine, as long as it's respectful and not hate speech and stuff. I guess I don't know. I'm just reading it how I see it. That's all.
I wrote in chat something that is, and I know it's silly, but it's a thought that crosses my mind a lot. Is if Islam is becoming more powerful and Christianity is fading, who's going to battle with it? You know what I mean? With Islam, do we have the fortitude for that? I don't know.
What do you mean by fortitude?
I don't know. I see because we're humanists and we don't have that. But then I guess probably all they would end up doing is just destroying all of us anyway. Once they clashed. But I feel like that only the Christians really have got the fight in them to fight Islam the way that, and then it's silly. I know that there's a part of my mind that looks at that and says that's ridiculous.
I know they keep telling you that. Like, I know that the Christians sort of say, hey, we're the only ones who can fight Islam. I know they keep saying that, but is that the actual case?
Well, they're good fighters.
Do the arguments the arguments the arguments aren't any different from addressing Christianity to addressing Islam. The Noah's flood is just a ridiculous story as the moon being split in half. It's the same arguments against and for them. And what I've noticed recently is Islamic people using those Christian arguments, like fine-tuning, and they've kind of become more sophisticated, like the Christians have, when it's switching from Pascal's wager to the teleological argument, everything must be designed kind of thing. And I've noticed Muslims doing the same, from, hey, Islam is the religion of peace, to the fine-tuning argument, teleological argument, But I'd like to welcome Dan Ditso, but I would like your thoughts on that. Robin? Why shouldn't our arguments work just the same against Islam?
I didn't mean like defeating Islam arguments. I just
Okay.
meant fighting Islam, fighting Islamists.
What do you mean by fighting? What
Well,
do you
I
mean?
Means war.
Yeah,
Oh, like physical, like
I just mean
um,
that I don't know. I don't know how to put it without sounding crazy, but I mean, I just feel like that if one religion is going to win out, I would rather it be Christianity over Islam, but I definitely don't want to be
What brand,
world
really?
about Islam. But I mean, if they
hmm.
were all like Isa, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's just a silly thought that I have all the time. I just don't feel like
I
that
think
we're
Well,
even okay. Let me go with this from an American perspective. Let's say, one thing, these polls and statistics about the general populace's beliefs and the shift in them is not representative of our armed forces, first and foremost. And so, like the majority, anecdotally, of armed force recruitment and admissions and whatnot is from the places that are more religious, are more Christian. So they are going to hold a stronger ethic against totalitarian religion, right? Or things that will counter the American way, right? And certainly they would view the Islamic regimes as, a threat to that. So the idea that America, in terms of armed force, would be less zealous because of these cultural shifts, I think is false. Just on its face, from what I've seen, in terms of like military recruitment being more prominent. Like if I went to Columbus City Schools and I saw the ROTC table, so few kids would be there, right? But if I go like 15 miles from where I live to Grove City, where it's much more conservative, the ROTC table has like a line, right? They're active in the high school in the mornings, right?
right.
Have a classroom of kids just, let's go, let's join the military because they ain't got shit going for me. My parents don't have money for college, right? Like I'm gonna fight for this country, right? And they're Christians and they're proud of it. So yeah, that's one thing. And the second thing is, just because a country gets more secular, I don't think it follows that they lose zealotry to keep what they have, right? To keep the freedoms they have.
So there's
Right.
still cultural sort of
Certainly. It's like you think,
patriotism.
yeah, it's like you think Aaron Ra wouldn't push the nuclear button if he had to,
Right.
right? Like he fucking would.
I'd like to welcome Dan here, and I'd like to give you a chance to sort of, say, make comment on anything. No, perfectly fine, Niddy, perfectly fine. I just wanted a nice opportunity to welcome Dan and sort of anything that you want to talk about or on the subject of failing religions.
I've been listening a little while, and just to give you a little perspective, thank you for having me. I yield from the other section of America, the Latin American side.
Right.
My whole experience, I lived in the United States, I lived in Canada, Mexico, and throughout the whole continent. I'm originally born in Costa Rica, and I was adopted into a Costa Rican Venezuelan family. So I have the mixture of both countries and the perspective in that sense. And my work, I'm 42 years old. I have degrees on law, sociology, political science, linguistics. I've done my share of stuff. Yeah, and just recently, in the last 13 years, I worked in Costa Rica to get cannabis or weed or pot legalized, and we did it successfully, at least the medicinal side, and we're working to do drug policy reforms. But let me give you a perspective of where I come from. My constitution establishes on the Article 75 that the official religion of my country, Costa Rica, is the Apostolic Roman Catholic. Catholicism is one of the strongest forms of religions here, even surpassing Christianity. And you know the beef between Catholics and Christians. They have had a historical beef for a long time. On that beef is in regards if the Pope is the one who blah blah. I'm an atheist. To be an atheist in a country like in Latin America is even harder, because here religious conservatism is even there's this very hard sense to it. If we see the last socialist movements, like for example Sandinista with Ortega, his message is the revolution is socialist, Sandinist, and Christian. We see it in Venezuela with the movement of Maduro and Chavez. He went really hard with supporting Christianity and Catholicism in various sense. We see it with Ortega. He's kicking out the Catholics and inclining himself towards the Christians in that sense. So religion here, especially Christian Catholicism, third place you would say Judaism, and then Islamics, that Abrahamic combo has been a
sounds complex.
It's extremely complex. I could go for hours, but just so you would understand, the sorry, English is my second language, so I have to.
No problem at all. Absolutely.
So, from the era of our independence in the last 200 to 250 years, that's including the United States one, religion is the remnants of colonialism here in our area. The conversation in regards to the Western Hemisphere has been sequestered by the United States, and we in Latin America keep on reminding them we're also American. Bugger off. We're tired of the exceptionalism. And in the matters of religion, that concept has been there. In the last 30, 40 years, we've seen a decline, systematic decline, an abandonment of Catholicism, an abandonment of Christianity, a rejection towards Islam, and a certain pull away from Judaism. Judaism is not seen as entirely a religion here. It's mostly seen as an ethical practice, in that route. But still, and in the case of my country, which is the only one in Latin America that maintains that constitutional confessionality in its practice of the republic, of the democracy. We see, for example, you have no idea the fight that I had to do against conservatism in regards of getting weed legal. I had to pretty much in 13 years destroy all their arguments, and they hated me for it. Every single time I came out on TV, radio, newspapers, etc., and they would throw any of the objections from a moral standpoint, from a Christian standpoint, blah, 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 I would just obliterate them. And the most simplest way I did was, hey, God created, if you believe in God and God created everything, he created weed. So he must have a reason why it wanted us to use that substance. So go figure, you say he works in mysterious ways. Okay. There's that mysterious way. It's a good blend. Maybe he gets you connected. Anyhow, point being is that religion is here in the Western Hemisphere something that people don't come to realize, but it's a debt that is owed for a long time, that we have to continuously get rid of religion and the mixing of religion and the state. because colonialism utilized Christianity, Catholicism, Islamism, Judaism, etc., all those Abrahamic religions as weapons of mass
Of course.
destruction.
Yeah, divine right is what they use to
Exactly.
lay down their sovereignty over these countries, that they were divinely had a right. Even as late as in the Americas, when they had, what was it with the Native American people? They had sort of a right to their land kind of thing, which was just horrendous.
And it was. I mean, our history is filled how Catholics in Latin America, mainly Catholics, but then Christians and Islam, pretty much attempted not only a genocide, a physical genocide, but also a cultural genocide in matters of how they impose these religions here in the Western Hemisphere. In my perspective, I will tell you this. I do consider religions are slowly failing and securely failing, but it's something that it's going to happen, I don't know.
Yeah, and Daniel Hammond reminded me it's manifest destiny is what it was.
The manifest.
Yeah.
Manifest destiny is the one originated in the United States. Manifest destiny, it was
Catholic churches, right?
It was a Catholic church, yes. El Destino Manifiesto. Yeah, sorry.
They had the doctrine of discovery, is what
the
they
doctrine
said.
of discovery. That's the one I was to mention. So prior to the Destiny Manifest of the United States, that was the doctrine of discovery of the Catholics. That it was not. It was not eliminated until 30 years ago. You know, just think about that. And you know what's interesting now that he mentions Destiny Manifest of the United States? People are not aware of something that is history in my country. Within the decade prior to the Civil War in the United States, and within the first 30, 40 years of our own independence, we had to fight a second time to maintain our independence. Mexico and 5 countries in Central America. That second time is known as the Walker Affair or the Filibuster Wars. That lasted from 11853 to 11857. I'm sorry, I don't use Gregorian calendar. I use the Halcyon calendar. So 11,853, that's 1853. Take 10,000 years away if you want to understand that. Mm-hmm. From the 11853 to 57, the advancement of William Walker with funding of the Vanderbilt family was to invade Mexico, invade Central America, and reopen slavery, because by that time slavery had been abolished in Mexico and had been abolished in 5 countries in Central America. Well, 6 if we take into account 7 if we take into account Panama and Belize. That's a different story right there. And he was somewhat successful. He was able to establish the República Sonora on the southern border of northern border of Mexico, southern border of the United States for a short while. Mexico came, fought him off. He had to run with his tail between the legs back to the United States. Then he planned and utilized what was happening in the Civil War of Nicaragua, and he became the president of Nicaragua. How do you explain a U.S.-born citizen becoming the president of a foreign republic? The opposition was able to beat him, and he was coming down to Costa Rica. So Costa Rica was just 30 years young in the matters of our independence. We had to scrabble an army. We had to run to defend our northern border, and we were able to defend it to such a degree that he had to run away again. On that the second occasion, then he came back to Honduras to try it again. He failed again, and he was then later on caught by the British. Look at this. A U.S.-born citizen from Tennessee was captured by the British on, that's 11857, 1857, if you want to use Gregorian. He was captured by the British, And he was never delivered to the United States. He was delivered to Honduras, and he was executed in Honduras. 3 years afterwards, your civil war started.
Crazy.
This example shows you that destiny manifests under that principle of we are the ones to govern all as the United States. Following this nonsensical Christian view, North Anglo-American Christianity worldview, has systematically tried to undermine us here. But the Christians here don't give 10 bleeding hells about the Christians in the United States. They consider them less than Christians, many of them. They consider them traitors to Christianity and just outright things. They consider that the Christianity in Latin America is the true Christianity.
Right. Because there is a rise in Pentecostalism in America, but not in Latin America. I think it's Catholic mostly over there, isn't it, Dan?
Mostly Catholic, yes. You have,
yeah.
I would say about, Latin America is a population of 640 million people divided in 33 nations. We more than double the population in the United States. Last things I checked is that Catholicism is practiced about 60% of the population in all Latin America, with 20 to 40% of Christians. Then one could say that there's anywhere between 12 to 13% either Jewish or Islamic, and then you have all sorts of other religions.
So how does it square away? How does it, because it was the Vatican that put in the doctrine of discovery to begin with. So you have a people that have been sort of, subject to this really oppressive colonialism under a doctrine provided by the Catholic Church in order to legalize the horrendous things they were doing to indigenous populations. And yet they still support the very institution that did that.
I'm going to put it this very simple way.
Okay.
It's hard not to believe in the God of the oppressor when the oppression has become the only thing you know.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. I suppose you could apply the same thing to African Americans and things like that, where Christianity has still got a massive hold.
Isn't it essentially like a vassal type relationship after a while? It's where the authority has installed people at the power for the church, right? And then they're just disseminating, this is the true belief, this is the right way to believe, and then generations go by and the vassalage is taken over into its own thing. It's always going to be now subjugated to the master. Or
what's interesting on that point is
source.
And Needy, I know you, Mark, you're not from the Western Hemisphere. By your accent, I imagine you're English, from Europe?
No, I'm from Australia.
Australia. Okay, well.
Yeah.
I'm from
United
Eastern
States.
Standard Time.
Eastern Standard, yeah. What you said, Needy, I think it's very interesting because it's a perspective that United States, many don't have. And here in Latin America, we do have. If we look at the process of colonization and invasion of European Asia that happened here, in question of between 11492 up to, I would say, late 11900s or 1900s, that period of, I would say, 400 some odd years, there was a moment here where systematically revolutions and slave revolts, like in Haiti, República Dominicana, even Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, etc., were happening. Spain was starting to have a lot of problem handling the situations here. In the first 200 years and that's between 11492 up to 11692, you see that the mobilization of Spaniards was happening massively. Portuguese, Spaniards, French, then the English, and then you would have mobilizations of Germans, of
French, yeah.
Netherlands, Belgium, etc. You know, all the freaking Western Europeans were coming here. That invasion, what started happening was an assimilation, an unavoidable assimilation that's very similar to how Rome started to break apart. As you expand that imperialism, you're too far away from the center, and that enabled the reconstruction of what we were here in the Western Hemisphere. But that reconstruction was happening on the pillars of the blood of natives and slavery that was brought here. When that kicked off the processes, all those revolutions started adding up to the point where you see the revolution of the United States popping off.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that, you see the French Revolution popping off. Right at the same moment, you see Haiti popping off, Mexico popping off, 5 countries in Central America popping off. Out of the 12 countries in South America, you see 8 countries popping off, and then popping offs in different areas. Those popping offs in the last 200, 250 years pretty much gave a death blow to the Europeans. If you see what happened between that time frame, the Europeans and the European civilizations were starting to face a whole series of hardships. Napoleon, internal wars, the Prussian Wars, etc. You know, you see the whole breakage happening, and then boom, last century starts, and what you get: First World War, Second World War.
Yeah, so like most empires, when they get internal conflicts or internal problems, they do fragment. And I think the British Empire probably was the largest empire in the history of humanity. And eventually India, for instance, by the time India wanted to leave or, you know, not be a part of their empire and have the Raj regime, at that point, Britain just let them go because, you know, that they couldn't hold them at all. But just quickly, I'd like to just give Yahooligan a big shout out for 5 readerships going out. A Pragmatic Crystal, Human Girl, Colin Caster, and Captain Butt. Winner, chicken dinner. Congratulations. Enjoy your emotes. And I don't see a 5th down there. So if you don't have gifted memberships turned on, definitely turn them on, because I'm definitely missing one somewhere. Somebody doesn't have it turned on. But for the moment, I would like to go over to Aiden, because he just joined, and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, welcome, Aiden.
On Aiden.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So one of the things that Dan was talking about was the system of slavery as it existed within the Western Hemisphere under the Spanish Empire. I'm sure what you referring specifically to one of the facets of the encomienda system that would have existed during the Spanish Empire and supported directly by the Catholic Church. And the thing that really broke Spain's grip on the New World that it had had since the early 1500s, in my opinion, and you'd be free to disagree with me. I'm sure you obviously know quite a bit about Latin American history, so you're free to school me on this, Dan. But the thing, in my opinion, that really shattered Spanish hegemony in the New World was the Peninsular War that happened in the early 19th century, started by Napoleon for the sake of trying to seat a Bourbon king on the Spanish throne rather than the current dynasty that had been headed by, I think it was Ferdinand VII, I think it was at that point in time. And his subsequent retaking over of Spain. It was interesting because he mentioned things like the French Revolution. And as a result of the Peninsular War, not only had Spain, as a result of losing the Peninsular War, lost a lot of its direct holdings on the New World colonies, the people in Spain directly were granted a system under the Bourbon kings that was far more free, than, relativistically, make that very clear, relativistically free than any of the other systems that had been provided before, where you were allowed local elections and local newspapers, and these things began to circulate in Spanish society that had never really circulated at that point before. So Ferdinand VII ended up, unfortunately, getting so scared over the fact when he came back to power after Napoleon was defeated, I think it was 1814, he ended up coming back to the throne of Spain. He was so paranoid over the French Revolution and so paranoid that he would be basically killed the same way that Louis XVIII was killed, that he was basically going to call a giant coalition of all of the other major European powers into Spain to try and murder any of the dissidents within the country and make sure that he kept on the throne. So a combination of the Peninsular War and Ferdinand VII's just total despotism and paranoia in the face of any sort of new libertarian or liberal kind of revolutionary thought that was beginning to sweep over Europe at that point were really kind of like the two death nails of Spain's authority over those colonies, and people like Simón Bolívar's ability to be able to wrest hold of those colonies from Spain, and other people obviously ostensibly as well, such as you had mentioned earlier, the Haitian Revolution, and that was led by Alexander Pétion and other people like that. But sorry, I'll stop rambling at this point and let you.
Well, I do notice that monarchies generally do tend towards that kind of paranoia. As soon as one ruler is weak, they do generally tend towards that kind of paranoia about novel ideas and free speech. They really are repressive in that way. But go ahead, Dan. Sorry, you had something to say?
Real quickly, Matt, Aiden, very interesting. Let me answer that in a very simplistic way. That event was just one pillar. It was an important pillar, but it was not the main reason as to why Spain lost all of it, because by that time Spain already was losing it completely. It was just a festering moment that needed to then advance for the loss of control of the so-called New World. The actual event that fueled that loss of grip and enabled then the series of events that ended up with the independence of Latin America, or the majority of Latin America, because people don't realize this. The process of independence did not end until 1174, when Suriname was the last country to become independent in the Western Hemisphere. So that is something people don't realize. And it has not even finished yet, to the point where we have Jamaica or Barbados or even Canada still being part of the Commonwealth, the English Commonwealth. The major event that forced that letting go of the hold that the European monarchies, English, Portuguese, Spaniards, French, etc., was two major events. Number one, the independence of the United States. From 11776 to 11783, that 8-year war was the signal that the rest of the Western Hemisphere needed badly, because everything prior to that was festering. We wanted independence. We wanted to destroy monarchy. We wanted to destroy the Catholic Church. We wanted to destroy the Europeans. We were tired of them. They were pieces of shit, and they deserved to be ripped apart. That's something that you would notice on the writings prior. So the United States Revolution process and the French Revolution. As soon as we saw the French kicking the ass of the monarchy, we understood what that was. Why it took between 11783, when United States actually became independent, and 11810 or 1810, when we start seeing the first Haitian Mexico, and then 11821, when we saw 5 countries in Central America, and then Venezuela, the Gran Colombia, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, etc. It's because that process of 40 years is what we needed to arm ourselves, to generate the resistance movements, to finance, to find people, to train them, to spread the message, to start generating that. So that's why we see that between what happened in the United States and what happened in the rest of Latin America, the difference of independence, if we start counting from 11776, it's 48 years. If we count from 11783, when War of Independence ended in the United States, it's 40 some odd years. Anyhow, that moment was the moment that the Europeans lost all grip. But why did Catholicism remain? Because the difference between the monarchs and the popes was one fundamental. Whilst the monarchs controlled economics and the political power, freaking A Christians and freaking A Catholics were able to infiltrate and assimilate into the cultural sense. So,
Right.
so when independence came, and this is a criticism towards all our forefathers, that does not take away from the great victories of becoming independent, but the lack of vision of saying, shoot, when we become independent and we break away from Europe, we also have to decolonize. And that means we have to kick the ass of all those foreign religions that are here and send them back over there. But you have a problem. How do you deconstruct and reconstruct your societies to come to realization that the religions that you're practicing are the religions of oppression? And
Well, here's something that might help, and I want to share this just quickly. This is 2022, where there was a protest at the Vatican where they were basically saying rescind the doctrine of discovery, and that is Pope Francis there. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the doctrine of discovery was only rescinded in 2023 in the Promoting Integral Human Development. They jointly repudiated the doctrine of discovery. So it only happened last year that this doctrine of discovery was actually officially rescinded by the Catholic Church. So the question comes, if it's that integrated into the culture, and it's a question that I wanted to bring up. I will hear from Justin because he's been waiting very patiently. But the question I have is, what is there something that has to replace religion? And but Justin, I'll let you sort of say what you want, but I want to go there as well. Sort of, is religion something? And I'll leave it for then. You just give me your thoughts, Justin. I'm sorry, mate. I'm not trying to guide you in any direction.
No, it's fine. Hi everybody. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Nitty.
Oh, thanks.
I just came on stage because of you, man. Mark was just a happy side effect. Just wanted you to know.
Okay,
good to see you.
Okay, I feel kind of unloved, but sure.
Earlier today, I saw the Reverse Room Rumble title go up. Are religions failing, and why? And I've been actually thinking about it all day. And I was like, as soon as I'm done work, I'm going on, and I'm gonna explore this topic. And as I thought about the title of your live stream, Mark, the fact that you had to pluralize the word religions kind of suggests they've all failed. If more religions keep popping up around the world, then how are they succeeding? If there isn't just one world religion, then they're all kind of failing. And I think one day they're definitely gonna. There's no question in my mind, it'll be a religious free world someday, which then segues into your question: would something have to replace it? I think something will replace it, but I don't know what that would be.
Okay. Something
Period.
will replace it. So do you think that something has to replace it as sort of a cultural barometer or a cultural indicator of where society is going? Do you think that can be science, or do you think that it can be something secular?
I don't want to limit it. It'll be secular, but I don't want to limit it to science. But like maybe art, maybe like some other form of philosophy, but something founded more, in fact, and maybe birthed from science, but not. I don't see everybody in speaker's corner in Europe someday, like with beakers and doing science all day. Like I don't see that, but maybe we get more music or more different types of art. But I think, I think something would definitely fill the void. I don't know that it'd be something as I don't even know what the word you would call it, but like as regular, like there wouldn't be like an every Sunday people are going to go and gather and sing certain songs and do prayer. I don't think it'll be anything like that, but something will have to fill the cultural void for sure. Yeah.
I would like to just give someone in that perspective. You see, I'm going to say it this way. When I was 8 years old, I'm 42, about to be 43. When I was 8 years old, that was my first time I told my parents I'm an atheist. When my grandmother, who was an extreme Catholicist, heard about that, and my grandmother, well, technically speaking, she was my adoptive grandmother, because I'm also an adopted person. That's another story. Anyhow, when my grandmother realized this, and 8 years afterwards, I came back to live in Costa Rica because my parents divorced, and well, we had to move back, blah blah. And for 2 years, my mom and we went to live with my grandmother. For those 2 years, my grandmother did everything possible. Kid you not, I would come back from high school, and there was a priest sitting on the table, and my grandmother would tell me, "Venga a conocer el padrecito. Come here, meet the little priest." I'm like, here we go again. And the priest will sit me down and tell me, "Son, I think you are misguided. God is great and God loves you all, blah, 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 blah." So I would just turn around and tell him, you know what? If I were forced to believe, I'd rather believe in Satan because it was the revolutionary than your God. That being said, I'm also indigenous from this land. So I have high connections with my people in the Caribbean section. And I asked one of my elders, how do you believe still today the stories about Sivu? Sivu was the god, our god. The word ditso means seed. And ditso, Sivu gave us ditso to plant and grow and whatever. Anyhow, after everything that happened with the Spaniards and everything. And the other turned me around and said, I don't believe there's no God. But our stories are a reminder of what we survived. So if there is or isn't a God, that doesn't matter. What matters is our history of how we have done things and how we remember. So in my own perspective, the replacement of religion is history. I may be wrong.
Can
But
you expand on that? The replacement of religion is history.
yes.
I believe I can put that under my umbrella of art. But continue.
Art, etc. But the expression of history as such, the remembrance of history. I will put it very simple. Religion is the art of belief. When belief is the acceptance of that which needs no proof. But history.
I don't think that's the definition of belief I would use, Dan. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I believe things with a lot of proof behind them. So I believe that evolution is true. I also know it to be true because knowledge is generally a subset of belief. You have to, if you know something, you have to believe it to be true, but that can have a lot of evidence behind it.
And here comes out my Latin American, and the thing is, I not
Do you
only
mean faith, maybe? Faith is more what
So-
you're talking about?
let me explain to you in this way.
Okay.
Yes, I speak English. Como se pueden dar cuenta, hablo español, eu falo portugués.
Oh, look, Dan,
Wow.
your Spanish is way better. Your English is way better than my Spanish.
So
Let me
why
put
do I
that
say
right.
The best
this?
Spanish I've heard today.
Because in Spanish, as well as in French, Portuguese, etc., but also, well, I can then bring in the because I speak my native language here of the BBD. But let's focus on this romantic languages, in particular in Spanish, which unfortunately is one of the main languages here. The word belief in Spanish is creencia. Both of them, English and Spanish and Portuguese and French, have the same origin, which is the Latin. That Latin, it refers to credere. That credere means to take something as true. When I say that, I'm obviously mixing what I know the word believe is.
Okay.
In Spanish, Portuguese, French, as well as in English. So when I refer to belief as a Latin American, both concepts, faith and belief, are heavily attached, are heavily intertwined between each other. In order to believe, you have to have a form of faith. You're expressing that faith, that you're taking this as certain, regardless of anything that proves to you otherwise.
Okay.
In that sense. So that explanation gives you that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For example, myself, one of the things I always say, one of my main rules, I believe in nothing. Yo no creo en nada. See how I use that word, creo, de creencia, de creer? Yep. So when I say I believe in nothing, it's not that I cannot express belief or faith or etc. It's the factual sense that whenever I take something into consideration, I need the evidence. I don't need it. I'm not going to part from a presumption of acceptance. I am going to part from an assumption of disbelief, of skepticism, of it may or may not be. Whatever the evidence tells me, that's then where I will walk into. And that, in the dialectical, ontological, etymological, etc. conversation, it's hard for many people because people have not done that deconstruction. They still cling to those concepts, even many atheists, even many out there. When you divorce yourself from that concept of belief, you start realizing that you don't take things for granted or for como si fueran ciertas, as if they were true. In order for something to be true, the evidence must point there. And if the evidence does not point there, then that might as well not be true. It may hold things that seem true, but that does not mean it's true. Somewhat confusing in that sense, but this is why atheism in Latin America is a bit radically different from how it expresses in Anglo-American, because language defines how we define things.
Yeah, so I think sort of the belief that you're talking about would be an unjustified belief or just faith or one of these sort of words. So it is a bit of a language barrier there. But when you're saying to have trust in history, a lot of history we can't have that belief in. Like a lot of history, we just don't know what happened, especially back, ancient Greek days. We don't even know if Socrates was a person or not. A lot of it, we take as Plato may be writing this as Socrates, but it was in fact Plato. So a lot of it, we like, history is really hard to get an idea of whether we can be confident in it or not. And so much history is written by the winners, essentially, whoever won the war or fought the battle and survived. So I'm not sure what you mean by sort of you see the replacement as history replacing religion. I'm still not sure what you mean by that.
I could see it as being something along the lines of just being able to tell a story. And then, like, so when I said it could fall under the umbrella of maybe some arts, just sharing the stories themselves can still have value, whether or not they actually happened or not.
Well, sure, yeah.
In fact,
what's value?
What's interesting on your point, Mark, and what Justin mentioned, I would argue as follows. We have, as humanity has progressed, as rapidly as it's progressed, we have also progressed in our capability of documenting. And more, we've been able to slowly break that imposition of the winner tells the story to just tell the story. And we see it, one of the best examples that we can still, and has a lot of influence is the Second World War. The capability of recording on the last 74, 75 years has exponentially grown. That does not mean...
since the invention of the printing press, sure. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. And now information, sort of internet, it's even exponentially higher. Absolutely.
That doesn't mean...
And that information is kind of polluted nowadays even too, to be frank.
Yeah,
yeah. And you look at stuff like China, where, they sort of have a firewall that eliminates any information that they don't want their people to have. It kind of can, like, you talk to somebody in China, they have a radically different story of say, the post World War II to now than we would.
And we have to agree that process is not infallible. It has its problems, but as we progress, we will see far more filtration. And what we are seeing today with the presence of flat earthers or anti-vaccinations, or these people that open their mouth big and loud to say a whole bunch of stuff that does not make any sense, we will see that slowly history, or the recapitulation of facts, is going to shut them down more and more and more. It's a slow process, no doubt. It's just like, the typical, what I'm doing here is interesting and maybe a little bit my way. But what I'm trying to show is that in the same way that religious people try to fill the gaps of the unknown with that God, and as more we progress in knowledge, that gap would get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller to a point where there will be no more gaps eventually, thousands of years in the future.
I think there'll always be a gap. Like, if you're talking about sort of God being outside of the universe, there's always going to be that gap, and that's part of the problem, that it used to be God was on a mountaintop, then he was in the sky, and then he was in space, and now he's outside the universe, and I don't see us going outside the universe anywhere in the next billion years or so.
Of course, but then those gaps become so smaller and smaller and smaller to such a degree that if it's outside the universe, who gives a damn?
Well, we'll change the definition of universe is what we'll do.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask if you have any thoughts on that. Yeah, I think that I think that history replacing religion, I'm not sure, because history is a good benchmark for our mistakes and what we've done wrong, and I like that idea that we can sort of learn off history and say, hey, here's are the things that we can and can't do, here's what works, here's what doesn't. But I think we need something going into the future to say, hey, this is this is how we ought to live and what we ought to do and what we ought to strive towards. I think that religion's got, and you know, don't treat the messenger, but I think religion's got a very compelling story, sort of a you're special and you're important and you've got to, you know, you're going to have these big rewards. I don't think any of it's true, but it's a good story. And I think that's part of the problem with secular things, that people feel like they're unimportant and small in the grand scheme of the universe kind of thing. And so they don't like it. I like things like Richard Dawkins when he sort of wrote the greatest story ever told is the story of evolution, and sort of made this identified this massive story to it. But I'd like to hear from you, Nitty, because you seem to have something to say about that. Do you agree with history replacing religion?
Not particularly. I guess it depends. Like, it seems to me like what part of history, like I think you'd have to like really narrow down for me, like what, how much, like, you know what I mean? I just don't quite get it. So no, like I would, like, we always love stories, right? I think humans need shortened heuristics for what has happened and what may happen in the future, and whether or not that's accurate to the past. For some people it matters, for some people it doesn't. It's more about, does this narrative make sense to me, and then secondarily, is it useful? And sometimes it's based in reality, sometimes that's not. And maybe that's where what you can think of as religion. Well, I mean, religion, certainly all the faiths we know about serve that purpose and do those things for people, right? Here's the story of where I came from. Here's how I got to be where I am. And, you know, this set of facts from the past and our observations now seem to correlate and be useful to me. And this story also gives me some hope for the future. So I'm going to keep it, right? And maybe for some faiths, it's more correlative to history than others. And I would love for it to be like, you know, that everyone just kind of defaults to a deist God, where we're like, okay, like that maybe there's some immaterial things that we don't have great physical, there are things that we don't have great physical explanations for, so we'll just leave as supernatural, right? Like love or the appearance of design, like things that believers like to throw in there, right? But, you know, we could just say like, that's part of our narrative as like a stopping point for comfort or whatever. For some people, I'm not saying for people like us, I'm just saying like broadly. I don't think about like epistemology and ontology and all that junk. Where was I
Sounds
going
to
with
me
this?
like you're discussing like a midterm in between now and like the religion's completely gone.
Right. And so it's like
detox stage.
Right. Where people recognize, oh, these narratives don't correlate with the past, right? They don't function well. They don't map up with their experience. We're getting too much cognitive dissonance from when the F is Jesus coming back. Like, it's 3,000 years now. It's 4,000 years now. What did he really mean by generation anyway, right? Like, you know, and as those things break down, there's going to I think there will be some adaptive form of most of these, and then whichever one continues to be most useful to the people who are subscribed to it, that or want to subscribe to it, has potential to win out. I'm not saying it will, because maybe we'll all blow ourselves up before that happens.
Probable.
It would still be the end of religion. Just saying.
That's true. Religion would still fail if we annihilated ourselves. Yeah.
But what if the dolphins worship something, and then was like, whoa?
Maybe they worship humans.
Oh no,
maybe.
No, they don't. Maybe that's where they learn to do some of their naughty things.
Justin, when you said art, what did you mean by that? Like art replacing religion?
It was
Do you mean sort of a
it's a space I live in, so it was the first thing that I put in place of religion, right? If people aren't focused so much on, the beginning of the universe or where life came from or things like that, they might put that into maybe a painting or a song instead, something thoughtful that will inspire others, right? So did I mean it had to be art? No, but I was just trying to fill that gap of like, does something have to replace religion if it's gone? Well, yeah, something would have to. Um,
well, my mind's
maybe it'll
going
be
over
exploration. Who
well,
knows?
my mind's going over art and history and those kind of things feed into a cultural identity, right? So especially artistic endeavors, when we have artists that define a generation like Michelangelo and from Italy, of course, and say Van Gogh from Netherlands and things like that. They really play very much into even musical artists like
Well, and a lot of them were religious type artists too. Imagine a
right.
world of art where religion didn't influence any of that. It'd be very
But
interesting.
I find myself always very trepidatious or always very sort of slightly fearful when people start talking about a cultural identity being a central theme of their belief system. We can see the effects of that where people are American and that's their entire identity kind of thing. I find it to lead towards and there's nothing I don't get patriotic myself. I think that patriotism isn't necessarily bad, but like it leads towards jingoism, in my opinion, when you make that your identity kind of thing. So when somebody points out, hey, Australia did all these bad things, and you get, that you make that your identity and all you are, you will get angry when someone says that's bad because they're insulting you, not just the country that you happen to be born in. So
Trust me. Sorry, but trust me, that happens a lot with me when I talk to North Americans in regards of their own history and the impacts of that history in towards Latin America. Oh, I've been told that I'm not American. I've been told that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm completely and utterly controlled by the powers be, that America is freedom, that yada, 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 yada. But, your point being here, I think that it's very important. When I say history will replace religion, it's in one way is how we say the story, how we tell it. Eventually, knowing that if you enable certain people to control the narrative, then that story is going to be told in a twisted sense. So that's why I say, with the advancements of recopilation of information that we have nowadays, that capability of controlling the narrative is going to be less and less and less. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It means that those of us out there who are, getting into the process of documenting history, of making sure that what is being told is what happened as close as possible to the reality, then those controls of narratives will be less and less. But that pillar of history is also accompanied by the art has been always a manifestation of how that reality is seen. One piece of art that actually makes me that fuels this whole analysis that I'm putting it. That is one pillar. Believe it or not, is the anime One Piece, because the essence of that anime is there's a 100-year gap history. Nobody knows about it, and there's this great pirate era. Everybody's rushing to gain whatever the One Piece is, and then you have this character, Monkey D. Luffy, which is just the representation of, I just want to live. I have my dream. I want to go get it. I guess if we translate to that, the dream that we've all been pushing towards is the freedom of religion, freedom of authoritarians, freedom to be. But realizing that, shoot, I got somebody next to me that also has the same dream, and somebody next to me that also has the same dream. So freaking A, let's work together, see if we can try to work together. And that makes it even harder. So I guess that the main thing is religion is the vestige of ignorance. I don't know if I'm saying that right. El vestigio de la ignorancia. The vestige.
Vestige of ignorance. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
And that still is there, but less and less so, because knowledge is the roots of today and the tree of tomorrow, if I want to say it in the most metaphorical way possible. So I guess that the major point being here is that for many of us who are recompiling history, we have to know that we have to learn the languages from where that history is coming from, because the story is not told the same in English or in Spanish or in French. It may have commonalities, but the way it's told is different from each other. But then how do we ensure that no matter the language, the story, the basis of that history is told accordingly throughout the whole area? And I think that one of those major points is, technology. Technology will enable us to then continue that process. And we've seen that grow and grow even from the end of the war, because now, I mean, it's common, it's fundamental. Yeah, we know the Nazis were the bad guys, and everybody else fought against that. They did everything they could, but that did not mean that the United States was the great guy. We know that the United States didn't want to go into the war. That if it hadn't been for the Pearl Harbor in 41, December 13th, 41, then the United States would not have entered the war. And entering the war, the United States had two fronts, Pacific and European. And they needed the assistance of pretty much everybody because they did not have the military force to fight two fronts in such a big ass war. So when we speak of those things, we can then deconstruct those, patriotism, United States, America, 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 America type of speech of people who just want to impose their own sense of justice, if we could call it that. I guess that's my point.
I'm not sure all Americans are on board with that. I think that, as I said, patriotism kind of unchecked leads to jingoism, and it's jingoism that you're describing there. My country is better than every other country, but I know a lot of Americans who go, yeah, we've got massive problems, even though they have the biggest military and they have a massive economy. They've certainly got problems in capitalism and things like that. So,
you know who helped them to believe that they're the better country of the world? The Europeans. I mean, I've said to Gringo up there, this is not a competition. We're not competing. It doesn't matter who's the better country or who's the worst. We're all striving to do what we can do to live in our areas as best possible. So, sorry, pardon my French, excusez-moi, fuck your exceptionalism, because I don't give a damn if your country, I'm talking generally, not to you, Mark, or Needy, or anybody. We need more voices that come out and put on check that rhetoric of bullshit. That's what I call that. that rhetoric of the gringo or the North American or the Anglo-American, the United States citizen, we're the best country in the world. Look at us. We have the best military in the world. Bullshit. I don't give a damn. You don't. You've been fucking
Well,
up since the end of the war, type of thing.
They definitely do have the best military in the world. That's not even under question. The technology level they have and the amount of resources they pour into it is insane. It's not really even debatable. But just because you have the greatest military doesn't mean you're the greatest country in the world. I think that there's a whole load of other stuff that rides on that. But I don't. I don't see history and history is important. Don't get me wrong; it's incredibly important that we don't repeat our mistakes. Incredibly important. I see that there has to be philosophies and there has to be something other than just remembering what happened in the past, guiding us into the future. I'm personally, I'm a bit of a globalist. I think that countries are just arbitrary lines that we've drawn. I don't think there should be individual countries. I think that we should all be together, pulling for the same thing. But a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
There's a saying in Spanish que el humano es el único animal que se tropieza con la piedra 2 veces y culpa la piedra. That the human is the only animal that trips on the stone twice and blames the stone.
Okay.
What I wanted to say on that is that, one thing I found out talking a lot.
What is the human tripping? I mean, I like the saying. It makes sense. I think we understand what it means. But what does that got to do with what does that got to do with what Mark said?
Shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, kind of thing.
What I wanted to say with that is, in regards of Mark, is that how to put it in hold on, I'm translating really quickly what I'm trying to say. So give me a moment. Sure. Okay. What I wanted to establish on that is that I agree that we, as of right now, we humans have come to a realization, hey, we're living on this planet, we're all Homo sapiens, etc. But the problem with globalism and my experience with the United Nations and working with the United Nations and working with the different things is that regionality does matter. Where you're at influences a lot of what you do and how you think and how you mobilize. For example, me as a Costa Rican and having my history and my knowledge of my history, etc. Hell, the reason I have such disdain for military is because my country abolished military in 74 years ago, in 49. And if you ask me as a Costa Rican, military has to be abolished worldwide. It's the correct move. It's the only move that needs to happen. But I'm saying that because from my bias, from my location, from my area, I have lived most of my life without the danger of militarism. So the interesting part of what you're saying there, Mark, as globalism, is that what has been hard working from areas like United Nations, trying to work with different cultures, etc., is that, for example, there are so many misconceptions of what Western cultures are, of what Western Hemisphere cultures are. They don't understand that Western cultures, as pertain from the Western Hemisphere, is us, from Canada down to Argentina and the Caribbean. Why are you adding English? Why are you adding Germans? That's Western European. That's another type of culture.
Well, it's just a heuristic. It's just a shortcut to those countries that originated or have still have bases in Western Europe.
And that's the criticism. English is a problem because if you define everything by one particular language and you do not allow all other languages to show that variance, then it's going to be more hard for those of us that are part of this whole Western Hemisphere to show the world what we have done and difficulties, etc. Blah, blah, blah. What I'm trying to say is that when you enable shortcuts and you enable misconceptions, like, for example, I'm going to give you examples very fundamental. Oh, the Gen Zs, the Gen X, the boomers, etc. No, there's no such thing as boomers or Gen X or Gen Z. That's a pseudoscientific category bullshit definition that was established by two charlatans, Strauss and Howie, that don't mean anything.
Well, Dan,
Why?
it's just a word. It doesn't have any, like, it just, like, Australia is considered part of the Western Hemisphere, and there is no conceivable way we are in the West. Like, there's no.
Yeah,
we
I
are
know.
in the southern eastern hemisphere in relation to everybody else. Like, there is no way we're the West, but we're still considered part of the Western world. It's just a name. It doesn't really mean anything.
It's just a label.
No, it's just a label. We're also part of, Indochina, I believe it is. I think that's the name for it, or the Oceania. Sorry, we're also part of Oceania, and that's more geographical. But the West is simply cultural or political. It doesn't really have a lot of pull as far as describing anything geographic at all.
I think that the major point that I'm trying to make here is that
do you feel like separating things into the West and Latin America and stuff, do you think it sort of creates divides between people? Is that what you're trying to say? It sort of says, hey, we're different than
in one way,
people.
yeah. In one way, yes. But I'm also trying to say that I'm gonna put it. Hold on. When we allow labels that mean absolutely nothing without the context of why those labels are being utilized, then we allow stereotypes, and then those stereotypes allow prejudice to continue flowing through the whole sense. And that's one criticism. One major criticism, and I've said it in the United Nations, and people that have not liked me, or some have liked me, etc., is that in order to change, in order to fix that which has been continuously broken, like the failure of the war on drugs, and we have to change drug policy, we have to change how we approach that history, how we approach that understanding of epistemological, ontological, etc., etc., etc. And that English, or the English language, is not the only one out there that has that capability of redefining, or not only redefining, but also eliminating those labels and showing what it is from that perspective, from that sense of reality. Now, that being said, I think that the major problem that we face today, especially and particularly post-World War, is that we enabled the self-entitlement of some, and we're repeating the same error of a post or a modernistic, imperialistic consideration. So the old empires grabbed into that, and the new ones that are appearing, or that appeared in the last 250 years, aka United States, rode that wave. So that's where we see that belief in we're the best country in the world without any evidence or without any factual sense to back that up. And we see that they act upon that belief. So go back to that point of conversation. The problem is when you believe on something and you act upon that belief, and then you make that mistake and then blame the stone, because you fucked up. That's where we need to address the whole situation from that philosophical sense of things. You know,
Well, I'm a secular humanist, so I think humans are humans, but that doesn't mean we don't categorize humans into different groups based upon certain attributes that they may have. It doesn't mean that I think they're any different. It just means that for convenience sake, we can put like groups around people. Like I can sort of put a group around gamers, for instance, and put certain people in that group, even though we're all still human. It doesn't make any difference to that. So I don't think that sort of using these terms is necessarily bad. I think that when you're othering people, like you're saying, hey, there's something, and I get what you're saying, like the American hegemony and the American imperialism and sort of the idea that other countries, to quote a famous president, are shitholes, basically, is really bad. You know, nobody here would disagree with that. That is incredibly damaging to not only international relations of that country, but also to the cultural worldview in general. You know, because that country's going to go, well, screw you, buddy. And then, you know, that idea of a global village that we sort of adhere to will start to break, because you've got, you know, one person saying, hey, that guy's stuff is just terrible. It's a bad idea. But I don't know that sort of talking about the West versus the East, for instance, or America versus China, or any of these things that we discuss, as long as you aren't sort of saying, hey, the West is vastly superior to the rest of the world, which it may be on some fronts, but other fronts not. I think that it's fine. I don't understand the problem there.
I think that what you said is very interesting.
Yeah.
We can label people and say, okay, gamers. But
Yeah.
if we look at gaming as video game or
Be very careful now.
Hey, I'm a gamer. Don't worry. I myself play video games, and I've been playing them for a long while. Anyhow, if we look at that activity, you can concede on the fact that anybody can become on that. Anybody can become a gamer, because it's just a question of picking up the console or the instrument to which you then play. But if then we say, can anybody be from Costa Rica? No, because it's the person like myself.
There.
You can migrate there, and you can share on the culture, and you can then have a form of adaptation, or I dislike assimilation, but yeah, we understand assimilation, but still that concept of anybody becoming Tico, or anybody becoming Argentinian, or anybody becoming Mexican, etc. It has to do also with the fact that, you know, you're born to a specific geographical regional section, and you live there, and that influences a lot of who you are as an individual. We can agree on that. That is an inescapable fact. But then, can you become aware? Can you have knowledge? Can you experience that of the other cultures, which you cannot fully become, but you can be part of? Yes. You can develop that knowledge. In my example, look, I was born here in Costa Rica, and from the first year of my life, by the age of 9, I had already lived in 5 different Latin American countries because of the work of my father. By the age of 16, I had lived in 8. By the age of 22, I had already gone from Canada down to Argentina on a motorcycle. By the age of 25, I already traveled all Caribbean. So I knew all this continent, not because I picked up a book and just read about it, which, yes, that can be helpful, but because I was there. I was moving. I was meeting people. I was, experiencing. So just like a question of gaming, a person can become, but in order to become, you have to pick up the console and start playing. In culture sense, and in historical, artistic,
Well,
etc.
I think gamers are a subculture. Like, I think that is a culture. I think it is sort of, you have terms and you have behaviors that you'll find in common between this subculture that you won't find in other places, and certain things that will mean something to that subculture that doesn't mean it to other things. And all I'm saying is it's just a label, an easy way to sort of designate people. So when you say, hey, you're culturally Costa Rican, that's just a label. And I don't think it means as much as to sort of say, hey, you're any better or worse than anybody else in this world. It's just a designator to say where you came from. That's my opinion anyway, that we're all human. And essentially, by my mind, humans all sort of want the same things. They want to be safe. They want to be able to reach a sort of the best person they can be. They want to, love families and find love, and that kind of thing. Have shelter, be taken care of. I think we're all after the same things. But I want to go to Siddharth now, who just dropped in. Hello, Siddharth. How are you doing?
Hello.
Siddharth.
Hey, Mark, Justin, Dan. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Hello.
you're live, mate.
Oh, okay. I just saw the rumble and I dropped in. I genuinely don't know what the topic of discussion is.
This one
I mean,
is
what?
Religion's failing.
Okay, we found a rabbit hole. We're not sure either yet.
Okay. I would
It
say.
did
I mean,
tangent. It did tangent.
I would like to play. I would like them to fail, but I don't think that'll happen. From my first-hand experience, when I speak to people who I know, who I would deem to be fairly reasonable, but they are religious, and when you ask them about it, they can't justify it really. So once you're holding beliefs you can't even justify, there is no reason for you to stop holding them, right? Like, I can say anything and you can hand wave it away. So I don't
but
think
those
that's gonna
people
happen.
won't be around forever.
Well, yeah, of course they won't be around. Like, everything progresses a funeral at a time, right? But that being said, yeah, I I don't see this going away. Even like, we would have solved world hunger, but religion is not something that's gonna just disappear because people just got
So-
more rational or something.
You think we'll be living on Mars and someone's going to build a church there?
Yep, not only a church, we'll
Really?
be building all sorts of shit, like new religions popping up on Mars, right? Like,
Really?
you can't.
Scientology on Mars.
Yeah.
I can see it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you get like a whole new religion on Mars that people on Earth haven't even heard about. Like, I mean, humans can do strange things. Like, I don't
I would
doubt
love to see
that
the
at all.
Genesis chapter of the Bible on Mars. The first day God
Yeah,
created red.
like, what will
Do
the
you think,
first four lines be, right?
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah, Dan's taking up as well. Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care. Yeah. That was really interesting. Thanks.
What were you guys talking
Sorry.
about?
Well, do you think religion would fail as soon as we find an alien? Like, as soon as we find an alien, right? I mean, Christianity would be in big trouble. Correct? Am I wrong? Like,
Unless there's the
yeah, go for it.
go for it.
I don't think so. Like, maybe some particular version of Christianity is most likely balked, but Christianity in general, I don't. I think it'll just be used to what do you call it? Affirm more belief in it. Like I have seen people use various beliefs to affirm their own religiosity than not affirm it, if that makes sense, right? So I don't think an alien showing up is going to be like, oh shit, oh, Jesus was false, it was all wrong, we are all not Christians anymore, it doesn't make sense. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, people are too invested for that, no?
What if an alien showed up with his own book, and in that book was the prophecy that said we'd find a planet just like ours, right where it is, full of life.
I mean, we'd have to
I
read
think
that
I think
book,
we would have
right?
a lot of converts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, yeah. 'Cause the converts thing is much more probable and likely. The people are at the end. People are looking for things to believe in and feel. I wouldn't say comfortable, but to feel at home with, right? So when you're in that whole thing, you feel much more at ease and your life to be much more
Sorry, my
better.
friend,
Like,
you're
I mean,
starting.
The robot's
You're
got
starting
you
the
set up.
robot a little
Yeah,
bit.
you're roboting out, mate.
hello.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Am I audible?
we can hear
I
you.
don't know what happened.
Yeah. You just were roboting and going all squelchy kind of thing.
Yeah, it's my 5G connection thing. Okay. So all I was saying was that there is this thing about religious belief in that um, it brings comfort to people in that way, in whatever way you want to think about it, community wise or existentially speaking, or so many other factors play into it, right?
But
So
those
it's
comforts
going to
can be
be
replaced with other things.
it can be replaced.
We'll
Logically,
do a
it can.
crab boil every Sunday, and you'll have all the community you need.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like, I would definitely replace it, but I don't think my parents would, right? Like, that's the thing. I asked them, and I use my parents as an example because it's firsthand. I can vouch for their rationality, right? I know they are rational people, they are educated and things like that. So there's no point talking about some religious nut job somewhere who will do crazy things. Like, that's the exception in this point of view, right? Like, we are talking about normal people who appear really normal and like intelligent and doing very normal
You're
things, but
roboting again.
Oh,
then
yeah,
they
you're
hold these
gone.
kind
You're
of
gone.
absurd.
Yeah, no, Siddharth, you're roboting out again, mate.
I stopped.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you religious?
I don't know.
Are you a theist?
No, not at all. No.
No, but your parents are.
I'm more of it. Yeah, my parents are polytheists. The Hindu.
Hindu. Okay.
Okay.
So that's my gods.
No, I'm sorry,
Like
my friend. You're
No,
starting to
temples
cut
and all
out
that.
really bad now.
You're part of the machine cult as far as we can tell, because seriously, that roboting is
Yeah.
going.
You're calling us from that church on Mars.
Yeah, that church on Mars, mate. Yeah, you're kind of roboting out, Siddharth. I might just yeah, I might wrap it up. I'm really sorry, but you're really squelching. And it's
All
sort
good,
of
all good.
very, very harsh.
It's
on
my
me.
neck, I think.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Siddharth. Yeah. But I might wrap it up. Have you got any final thoughts, Justin? Anything else that you want to cover?
No, I'm satisfied with where this ended up. I was really interested in the topic of our religions failing and why, and I think that they will fail. I think they absolutely will fail. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in 1,000 years. But like I said, as we explore and technology gets a little bit further and science and medicine gets a little further, it'll be two things that will happen. It'll either be it will be that everything in every religious text will be just completely proven completely false, wrong, and it will also become unnecessary. These things that are comforting for people, they won't need those comforts anymore. there'll be other things we'll be able to focus on, to either just plain distract or to comfort ourselves.
Okay. And Siddharth, do you have any final words? If you squelch, I'll cut you off, but try and get in sort of a final word or a final statement or something.
I'd say that things have been proven false already. So if that was the reason, people would have already stopped believing. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, the gap between the people who don't believe and the people who still believe will become wider and wider as those who are non-believers expand their horizons, explore deeper and further, and develop new technologies and a new way of life. Anyone who does want to remain religious will find themselves left behind, I think.
I do agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. For my mind, it's sort of education and wait, Aiden's back in. Did you want a final word, Aiden, while you're here, while I'm wrapping up?
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
I was
that's
just
okay.
popping in at the. I didn't realize it was the very, very tail end of the stream. I was just coming back
Yeah,
from the quad stream.
but have a final sum up if you do want to, or just pass it over and I'll wrap it up if you want. I'm not really fussed.
Yeah, for the sake of brevity on your part, I'll let you wrap it up. But thanks for the show is all I'll say. It was a lot of fun for the time that I was there. It was some great topics, and yeah, go ahead and take it from there.
Okay, well, I think for my mind that religion is gaining steam overseas, and I think that atheism in general has to, but I would like it to refocus on Islam a bit more, as we seem to be always going for Christianity, and Christianity does not. I mean, it's the problem in our countries, but it's not the problem worldwide. So I think that ignoring Islam is a mistake, and I get what Robin's saying, but the people that are saying that us atheists don't have the temerity or the stalwartness or the juice, if you will, to fight Islam are the Christians saying that. And I think they're saying it because they want to be relevant in some way. I don't see why our arguments shouldn't work on Islam the same as it works on Christianity. It's exactly the same counter apologetics. But I think education is what sort of will lead people away from religion as they understand science, how it works, how we know what it is that's true, and that, just getting a process of critical thinking, being able to think in terms of will be skeptic until something's been shown to be true, I think is going to be very, very important. But I want to thank everybody for coming on. I want to thank Nidhi, Robin Webster, Aiden, Dan Ditso, Siddharth Nair, and Yahooligan, who have been your panelists. And I will try to include them all in the comments. I realize some people don't have YouTube links, but I'll put them all in the description. So if you do want to hear more from any of the panelists, just go to the description of the video. But I want to thank you all for coming, and I'll start my banner rolling. Don't forget, as I always do say, be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. I want to thank all of my mods in chat who do a fantastic job, even though the occasional mod can get very spicy. I like my mods spicy. I do like spicy mods. We don't want boring mods. We want spicy mods. But yeah, it's all good, and we can guide ourselves. And I think that we do have, when it comes to a story about the universe, we don't need a God story. We have an amazing story. It's called, basically naturalism and science and all of these things that we're discovering. And it's also got the benefit that we can see it, and we can observe these things. We can observe the universe growing. We can observe all these things, which is kind of one up on religion. We can actually see these things happening, which is fantastic. I do think we need something to replace religion, and I think we need something to, as Titan said, secular communities and socialist communities can replace that sense of community, that sense of belonging that we all kind of need. And I think that's important. But I don't think we need religion to have that. I think that's just what religion says. Oh, you only get fellowship from other Christians. No, I think that's a lie. I don't think that's right. But thank you, everybody, so much. And I will see you in the next one. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way. It really helps me out. And if you want to share it, go for it. If you want to foist this on other people, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Have a
See
good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.